Welcome back to the show. You're listening to Mike and Spike this morning. We were just talking about President Obama. Now, for quite a while, we've been talking about whether Barack Obama is truly eligible to hold the seat as the President of the United States.
And the reason why is because I have been getting a lot of emails from people, and people have been asking me because, I guess I'm on the radio and I know everything. Was he born in Kenya? Was he born in America? Well, I don't know, but we've been searching around, and I think I found an expert on this, and we'll ask him in just a second. We're really pleased to welcome, finally, after trying to get him on for a couple of months, because he's a real busy man, Dr. Jerome Corsi. He's the editor of Red Alert, a weekly financial newsletter. Also, he's a best-selling New York Times author and a contributor to WorldNet Daily, which is where I came across him. Also, he has a Ph.D. from Harvard in 1972. Dr. Corsi, would you happen to be on the phone with us?
I'm right here, gentlemen. Great to be with you.
Fabulous. Thank you for showing up. We're so grateful to have some of your time.
Well, thank you. It's a great pleasure to be with you.
Now, you heard what we were talking about just a moment ago, did you not?
Absolutely.
So, am I correct in assuming that you know something about this subject?
I've been researching it since I wrote The Abomination, the bestseller I wrote during the campaign. It was a bestseller for 4 weeks, and it was on the New York Times bestseller selling list for, I think, over 10 weeks. The Abomination looked at this issue, and I went to Kenya. I came back from Kenya with an affidavit from Barack Obama's grandmother, who swears under oath that she was present at Barack Obama's birth in Kenya, in Mombasa.
Amazing.
Now, we devoted this entire issue of our monthly magazine in WorldNet Daily, The Whistleblower. The April issue is devoted entirely to the question of Barack Obama's birth certificate and his eligibility to be president. Because, in fact, and we do not have Barack Obama's, this is the controversy, we don't have Barack Obama's original birth certificate, which is the certificate of live birth that lists the doctor, the hospital, the time of birth, the weight of the baby, the age of the father, all that mundane information. The Obama campaign and now White House has spent millions of dollars with attorneys to block any legal suits forcing the release of this document and many other documents concerning Barack Obama's background. We have almost no documentation of who Barack Obama is.
I know this is a loaded question. What could be their motivation? Why would they not release this information to us?
Well, it's hard to know what's on documents that you can't see. I'm an investigative reporter, and my experience is that when politicians don't want to release information, especially documents, it's because there's damaging information on those documents. Now, what these suits are alleging is, and there's good reason to say, what is the status of Barack Obama's citizenry? During the presidential campaign in 2008, questions were raised about John McCain, who was born in Panama.
Right.
And John McCain came before Congress, and he presented the information. It was clear that he was a naturally born citizen. Congress looked at the issue and resolved it. Barack Obama refused. Now Barack Obama is stonewalling and refuses to release a document as mundane as his birth certificate. And I've got affidavits from his grandmother in Kenya. I went to Kenya. In Kenya, it's widely believed that Obama was born in Kenya.
Mm-hmm. And how was your visit in Kenya, may I ask?
Well, I was going to hold a press conference on the last day I was there. I also investigated Barack Obama's ties to Raila Odinga, who's the prime minister, a very radical prime minister. Obama raised $2.5 million for him in the United States, which probably violates, half a dozen campaign finance laws. At any rate, the last day when I was in Kenya, about to give the press conference, the immigration authorities showed up and with armed military and automatic weapons. They demanded to see my passport, and that prevented. I was detained.
Mm-hmm.
That prevented the press conference from being held. I came out of the country with all the documents, and I've subsequently published everything in WorldNet Daily. The issue, though, I asked the detention authorities, have we done anything wrong? No. Were we being deported? No. We left, my press secretary and I left on the flight we originally had scheduled that evening. I had met with the vice president when I was in the country, the vice president of Kenya.
Mm-hmm.
So the government knew I was there and knew exactly what I was doing. It's that Raila Odinga, the day I was going to give the press conference, one of the Kenyan newspapers reported on it, and Odinga called up and made sure I didn't get a chance to give the press conference. It wouldn't surprise me to learn that Obama was in on that as well.
Right. Now, I had heard that you had been arrested in Kenya while tracking down information. I'm really pleased to find that you got this information. Now, let me ask you this: has the information that you've been sharing, is it getting any traction?
Well, there's millions of people around the country who are now increasingly aware of Barack Obama's refusal to give up his original birth certificate or all of his other records, his records at Occidental College. He was rooming there with Pakistani foreign exchange students. Now, usually universities don't put U.S. citizens in with foreign exchange students. So did Barack Obama register at Occidental as a foreign exchange student? But I've been able to document that when Obama was in Indonesia with his stepfather, ages 6 to 10, I have the records from his two schools. He was registered as a Muslim and an Indonesian citizen. So did Obama have an Indonesian passport at any time in his life?
You have those records that show that he
Oh,
was...
yes. They've been published, and I have them. I published them in WorldNet Daily.
Wait,
He attended two schools. He attended a public school and a Catholic school. And the records at both schools, I have copies of the official records, show that Obama was registered as a Muslim and he was registered as an Indonesian citizen. I can also prove that Obama got at least 1 year of Islamic instruction in the public school, and that he attended mosque with his stepfather, all of which Obama denies. I can prove it from the record and from testimony.
Amazing, amazing. Now, you're saying that millions of people across the country are starting to get it. They're getting behind this? Are you seeing a groundswell of support?
Yeah, every time, like this whistleblower issue that WorldNet Daily has published, Your Papers, Please, it's titled, why dozens of lawsuits and millions of Americans want Barack Obama to prove he's constitutionally qualified to be president. That whistleblower issue has just flown off the shelves. I mean, my books, The Abomination, continues to sell very strongly on Amazon.com.
Mm-hmm. And
so these remain hot issues, and there's about a dozen lawsuits that continue through the courts.
And I have to tell you, I had no idea, Dr. Corsi, that your title of your book was Abomination, and my apologies, but I have to tell you, I've been using that term since I read it on WorldNet Daily. I've been talking about the abomination.
Right.
And
well, I picked up the topic. Obama, I say, is mentioned twice in the Bible. You can go to Daniel. It's always the abomination of desolation.
Uh-huh.
That's the reference in the Bible when it's always an abomination and followed by desolation.
Oh, very appropriate, isn't it? Now, what's the game here? Now you're getting this information, but are you getting any support from the government? Anybody of any weight getting on
this?
this?
The Obama administration is doing everything they can. We wrote in WorldNet Daily. We documented that they're continuing to spend millions of dollars on lawyers to fight these law cases. So the Obama administration's out there fighting any release of this information.
So, because if you actually get get proof that he was born in Kenya, or like I believe he probably was, or any of these other things that show that he is not an American citizen because of the age of his mother, et cetera, the nationality of his father, where does that put us?
Well, again, it would be a constitutional crisis. And I'm sure millions of people would demand, if Barack Obama was not naturally born under the terms of the Constitution, that he resign. Mm-hmm. It would be a major constitutional crisis. And presidents have tried to stonewall documents before. Richard Nixon refused to release documents about Watergate and the tapes, so he was forced to do so.
Right. And
they still haven't all been released. It was the Watergate burglary occurred in 1972 before the presidential election. Nixon won a landslide victory against McGovern. He dwarfed the victory that Obama had. Nixon's victory was huge. I think McGovern only won one state in 1972. And it was 2 more years until August 74 when Richard Nixon resigned in disgrace after the tapes came out. Now, at that time, the journalists who were pursuing Watergate, Bernstein and Woodward of the Washington Post, were the darlings of the liberal media, because the liberals, the bleeding left, the bleeding edge, like I like to call the far left liberals, hated Richard Nixon. So today, they're protecting the same bleeding edge, far left radical fringe is protecting the Messiah, Barack Obama.
Uh-huh.
So anybody pursuing issues about Obama's birth certificate are asking to see what most presidential campaigns would consider mundane documents about their past. We're vilified for even asking for these documents.
So you're catching a lot of heat over this.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
WorldNet Daily is also finding that every time we publish an issue like The Whistleblower, it flies off the shelves. People come to WorldNet Daily and subscribe just to get that magazine. And then my book has continued to sell. So I've got hard evidence that there is a huge amount of interest in this. And if you search the topic on the Internet, you'll find there are, we detail the cases, but there are millions of people following this issue with very active interest.
Right. Now, I got an email a couple of weeks ago that had a couple of JPEGs in it, one of which was what a birth certificate in 1961 Hawaii should have looked like. And then
we published that in The Whistleblower. We show what the live birth certificate looks like. It's just, and we showed the difference between that and what the Obama campaign is allowed to be published.
Right. It's a real eye-opener for me when I saw that, because I went, oh yeah, because I remember 1961. I went, oh yeah, everything was handwritten, things were off of a typewriter, and things were messy, and carbon copies and that kind of stuff. A totally different look than what...
Totally. The document that Barack Obama has released is a modern, current document.
Right.
And the state of Hawaii has acknowledged that. Now, Obama refuses to allow the state of Hawaii to release whatever supporting documentation they have. So, this is a very easy crisis to go away.
Mm-hmm.
All Barack Obama, if he's telling the truth, then there's nothing in his birth certificate or these other school records
right.
or other records that Barack Obama has to hide. Then all Barack Obama's got to do is release the documents.
And you don't have a mole or anybody in the state of Hawaii who can get their hands on this document for you?
Well, again, it have to, depending on how the documents came, there are legal and privacy issues here.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just, go and steal or otherwise obtain documents that are supposedly under seal. Now, depending upon how the documents came to me as a journalist, under various of the Supreme Court decisions, I might be able to publish them. But for my going and obtaining the documents,
right.
I have to follow all the legal rules and respect the privacy rules as well.
Oh, yeah, because you certainly don't want the President of the United States mad at you and having
we're going to do it legally.
legal recourse.
We can continue to write about it and continue to show people the difference between what Obama has released and what. And we've done extensive analyses of the issue of the birth certificate and school records in this whistleblower issue. I'm going to continue to investigate it and write about it. And at some point or other, the history is the original documents will surface. And presidents who have tried to keep these documents under wraps for any length of time just don't succeed ultimately. The documents do out.
Right.
So, Dr. Corsi, this is Mike. I guess one of the questions I would have in this is, as we're looking at the end game here, if all of this came together, and you said, of course, we would have the constitutional crisis, people would call for Barack Obama to step down, I suppose. What effect do you think that's going to have on our American society if that were to happen? Me personally, or the two of us, we believe, hey, constitutionally, if that's the way this ends, that's what should happen. If you're not eligible, you're not eligible. But our question is, from you, from a person who's out talking to the people that you talk to, being the person that you are, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think there's going to be fighting in the streets? Do you think there'll be an uprising?
Well, if you're asking a political question, first of all, I don't think there's any need for any resort to violence of any kind, regardless what comes out.
Sure.
The experience is, the history, if you look at it, is that presidential popularity diminishes. Already, if we take a look at the Rasmussen polls, Obama's lost something like 27 points between his strong approval and strong disapproval since he came into office. Obama's 63% at the end of 100 days approval rating, which was touted by the mainstream media that's in love with Obama, is great. It was no better than Jimmy Carter's.
Yeehaw.
And Jimmy Carter didn't end up particularly well. He ended up with the lowest approval rating of any president, even lower than George Bush for his entire term, lowest since the end of World War II. So Richard Nixon's popularity was dramatically diminished by the time he resigned. So no president, Barack Obama's got a lot of challenges. First of all, history, presidents don't retain this strong level of approval rate. Of all that Reagan did about the best. And if Obama has a continuing economic crisis or some foreign policy crises, which appear to me likely, I don't think this economic crisis is anywhere near going away. I think we're my Red Alert newsletter, my economics newsletter on WorldNet Daily, I'm saying this is a bear rally, and the underlying economy and economic signs remain in crisis.
Right.
The banks are no stronger now than they were before the accounting rules were changed that allow them to keep these toxic assets on their books a little bit more easily because they don't have to mark them to market.
And you know of which you speak because, if I understand correctly, you have a strong financial background. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, I did a lot of graduate work in economics. My degree is in political science from Harvard. I spent 25 years in financial services marketing, and I'm writing a financial newsletter, economics newsletter. So I've been in financial services and spent a lot of my life and career analyzing and studying economics. The issue, and I predicted correctly, if you take a look at my book, The Late Great USA, which is the book I wrote before the Obama Nation, that was the book about the economic integration of North America, which is going on.
Right.
That book predicted that we'd have a significant attack on the dollar, that the housing bubble would burst, and that we would go into a significant economic decline. So I've been writing about that since 2005, and that turned out to be correct.
Right.
Now, for our listeners, we're going to recap. I've got a list of some of the books that you've been involved with: The Obama Nation, The Late Great USA, Showdown with Nuclear Iran.
Right, I've written 2 books on Iran, also Atomic Iran.
And then there was Black Gold Stranglehold.
Yes, a book on oil, and also Unfit for Command, which was the Swiftboat book I co-authored with John O'Neill against John Kerry in the 2004 presidential election.
Now, I saw one of your press releases, and one of the things you had spoken about in there was Chrysler and the filing of the bankruptcy. What do you think about what's happened here where the government basically has taken the majority shares and then given them to the union, and now the union controls that car company? Well,
it was a novel approach. Clearly, it was an attempt by President Obama to reward the union for their political support in his 2008 presidential campaign. I mean, that was obvious to anyone who looked at it.
Right.
The bankruptcy, now that it's in bankruptcy, the bankruptcy court is going to judge. This is a very good judge, Judge Gonzalez in Manhattan. He's going to determine that according to bankruptcy law, and the union are junior unsecured lenders. Now, at the head of the line is going to go preferred shareholders and secured lenders, including these 20 non-TARP lenders that the government couldn't strong-arm into just abandoning their claim on being repaid. So since it's now in bankruptcy, I'm not convinced that the bankruptcy judge is going to go along with the Obama administration and simply give to the union 55% of Chrysler.
Well, you know what? Thank you for the good news.
Yeah, I think that, and then the Fiat gets 20% of Chrysler without putting a dollar into the deal, simply because they've got small car technology. Well, Honda's got small car technology, and Toyota does. Why didn't Obama give Chrysler to them?
Oh, yeah.
And, the idea that we're going to have Obama mobiles produced by the White House and the bureaucrats, the administration, I think the union would be well advised to give some thought to whether or not this company, Chrysler, emerges out of bankruptcy able to produce a car that anybody's going to buy. Because if nobody buys the future Obama mobiles, well, the company's going to be bankrupt again.
Yeah.
And unless Obama, starts extorting Americans somehow or other to buy Chrysler Obamamobiles, Obama mobiles, I don't know how it's going to necessarily happen.
Right.
I mean, I've been in Europe. I've driven and ridden in Fiats. They're not. Let's just say they're not my favorite vehicle.
Well, not for Americans. I mean, if you're, a very small person, a Fiat might be great. and you're going right down the block to
Although
the
Fiat
store.
is, of course, not even near my favorite European car.
Exactly,
Sure.
exactly. So
And
now,
They make some very nice BMWs and Mercedes, and we want to get into
Yeah.
Right.
automakers. And there's lots of vehicles. If an Italian car, I'd prefer the Alfa Romeo. I mean, the
Oh, yeah.
Fiat, the Fiat is a stretch.
Like they say, fix it again, Tony.
Well, fix it, or used to say in South America, fix it all the time.
Oh, yeah, very good.
so Dr. Corsi, where do you think we're heading with Iran?
Well, I think we've got Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu coming to the United States in May. Now, initially, the White House said they weren't going to meet with
Right.
Netanyahu. I'm hearing some indication the White House may have changed that position. If Netanyahu comes to the United States and he becomes convinced that there's nothing to lose, in other words, the U.S. strategy that the U.S. is going to employ with regards to Iran is not going to do anything except give Iran more time, then there's no reason not to strike. And I've always said in all my books that I predicted that a military strike would be the outcome, and that Israel, in the final analysis, would feel abandoned by everyone, including the United States. So it's coming out the way I predicted. I also said it was the worst possible solution, because a war is totally unpredictable, and this will not be an easy war. Iran is a great distance from Israel. There's multiple sites. It's no assurance you take out the regime of the Ahmadinejad regime and the mullahs remaining control of Iran. They'll just have a justification for openly pursuing nuclear weapons if Israel attacks. But I don't think in the final analysis Israel's going to care. It's what's called the Samson option. At some points, Israel stops calculating. They just defend Israel. The State of Israel was founded by the Holocaust survivors who said never again.
Right.
And they learned that, even President Roosevelt, who refused to take in the St. Louis, this boat of refugees, of Jews that was trying to find a haven somewhere in the world, Roosevelt turned them out. So, the Jews who died in the Holocaust are a clear indication that Israel is not going to ultimately rely on anybody but Israel to defend Israel.
As well, you can't blame them for that. I mean, it's
I can't blame them for that.
It's got to be their only move.
And unfortunately, this is after when I wrote Atomic Iran in 2005, and I have been to Israel multiple times. The Israeli government, I can tell you firsthand, has not preferred the solution to this to be a military strike. It'll be a last resort.
Right.
But if Benjamin Netanyahu and now the people of Israel are moving to the right, you got to remember that Israel is largely a socialist state itself. It never was a conservative state. The early kibbutzes and all the rest of the foundation of Israel was largely socialist from the beginning. But in the final analysis, when Israel feels an existential threat, in other words, when it's attacked or there's a danger to the survival of Israel, Israelis rise up and defend Israel. And I think we're coming down to that again. Now, President Obama wants to have talks, and Ahmadinejad may. The Israelis invented the game. I mean, the Persians invented the game of chess, and the Iranians could take a year to talk about talking.
Right.
And they can drag this out. And if Ahmadinejad has some political advantage in winning the June elections by promoting an agenda to talk with President Obama, that does not mean that the talks are serious from Iran's point of view. Talks would be serious from Iran's point of view if President Obama wanted to convert to Islam, or if he wanted to abandon Israel.
Right.
Iran would be quite interested in those talks. But if President Obama wants Iran to stop enriching uranium, it's a waste of time, because that's just not going to happen. And there is no brand new sentence that President Obama, whether the Democrats and the far left want to consider him the Messiah or the one, there is no one sentence he can figure out. The Iranians will say, "Oh, we didn't think of that before. We better stop enriching uranium."
Right.
It's a foolish idea, naive.
All right. Well, look, we know you can't stay and talk to us all day long. Mike, you got anything else you need to throw in before we say goodbye?
No, I just want to give one more plug for Dr. Corsi's books. Where can we find these books at, Dr. Corsi?
Well, on Amazon.com, The Abomination is still selling quite well, and The Late Great USA is now in paperback. It's about $10 with a new epilogue, and it's going to be the basis of my coming book, which is America for Sale, which will be out in October. And then I write on WorldNet Daily. I'm a senior staff reporter, and I've contributed to this whistleblower issue on Obama's birth certificate, and I write a weekly economic newsletter called Red Alert, redalert.wnd.com.
And if you have any more updates on that, because I quote you all the time on the show, because I've been this is Spike, I've been a real believer in this whole birth certificate thing. Is he qualified or not? I think if he's not, he ought to be out. But so we will keep in touch with you. Please keep our phone number, if you would.
Great.
And give us a call back anytime that you feel like you want to talk to us. If we're not here, talk to the answering machine. But let me ask you one more thing. Dr. Corsi has a disc jockey for many, many years, and every time you get somebody on who you really like, you ask them to say words to the effect of, "Hi, I'm Dr. Corsi, best-selling New York author and New York Times author, and I like Mike and Spike." Could you do something like that for us?
Sure, I'll be happy to.
Okay, let me run the tape. Hold on. 3, 2, 1.
This is Jerome R. Corsi, the New York Times best-selling author of books like The Abomination, also My Late Great USA, and I'm here to say that I like Mike and Spike, and I'm happy to be on their show anytime they ask.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
We're great. It's great to have you here, and we hope to talk to you again, Dr. Corsi.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.